There has been so much tempest in my life that the quiet places in which my childhood was spent and the quiet voices that sounded there seem to me sometimes not to have belonged to my life at all, but to have been part of the life of another, of whom I have heard or read, or whom I have imagined. One whom I can observe with considerable detachment as the story of his days pieces itself together in my mind again, and his dreams come back to me. And continually my thoughts have gone back to the places that were first familiar to me, and my ear has heard the voices that it first heard. I was born in the city of Dublin on the 10th of November 1879. My father was an Englishman, a sculptor. On my mother's side, I can go back to a great-great-grandfather, Walter Brady of Nobber in the County Meath. He fought in '98. When my father and my mother married, there came together two very widely remote traditions, freedom loving both. And these two traditions worked in me and, prized together by a certain fire proper to myself, made me an Irish rebel. Or rather, made me the strange thing I am.
Irish men and Irish women, in the name of God and of the dead generations from which she receives her old tradition of nationhood, Ireland, through us, summons her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom.
Patrick Pearse and his brother Willie were born at number 27 Great Brunswick Street, the street that bears their name today. It was here that their father, James Pearse, established a stonemasonry business in the 1850s, a business which flourished and provided the Pearses with a comfortable middle-class upbringing.
The home life of Patrick Pearse was one where he was surrounded by books. The father had very little formal education. He was a craftsman, he was a stonemason, but like the classic Victorian that you'll find in the writings of Thomas Hardy, who was himself a stone carver, he was a self-educated man. He was not a didact. A huge thirst and hunger for knowledge.
Rud a hathnig mórlum fé ahran firsig ná, gur chréid sé, níwan gur chréid sé sirse na hern, ach chréid sé cultúr na hern, agus besnas dói des na príomh farsna mandala tíisiam an firsig, spraige chun dul isteach scoil na mráithir nói, a ré an íotir am lachlia, en a chur sé ólas na chéadúir theanga na Gaeilge.
Pearse was an intelligent and industrious student, but suffered from extreme shyness as a child. Growing up, he had a stammer and a squint in his eye, which contributed to his awkwardness. He would favour a side profile in photographs when he was older. On leaving school, he joined the Gaelic League and became immersed in the Irish cultural revival. Although he went on to study law and qualified as a barrister, it was in the language movement that his future lay.
Héisgó cáiliú mar abhcóide ní throite a gá chás agus na cásna sin daoine a cuireann slí orb mar gur an anam in Gaeilge goid cartsachaí, agus bhí sé an aon slí ag an am sin d'anam a bheith in Gaeilge. Bhí daoine a gannar a Gaeilge a cheap go mo cheart neamhhíime dhéanana an slí sin, ach bhí an Pearse go bhábhar ionsaí a chuir ar an slí sin trí chásnaí a thiúrs an cín, ach an dáúir hepper ar na cásnaí a throid sé. Níl saman ar sin tada faoin chumas mar díador beidir go renda brethúna cléanta in aí agus ba chuma ceirta dhéanfaí. Ach ba chuid é sin chunachta sa bhí aige ag ire cearta teangan a bhaint amach.
We advise all Gaels to simply ignore the British law that makes it penal for them to use their own language to the exclusion of English. If they are summoned and fined, let them refuse to pay. If they are sent to prison, let them go to prison. The question can be brought to a head, no other way.
Pearse wasn't what I would call an extremist. He wasn't a Republican in these early days. The most prominent people, Dr. Hyde, John McNeill, George Moonan, Agnes O'Farrelly, and these who were most active on the Cushtignoha, they would be all supporters of the John Redmond and the Parliamentary Party.
In 1903, Pearse was elected to the Executive Committee of the Gaelic League and became editor of the organisation's paper, and Clive Sullish, a position previously held by one of the founders of the Gaelic League, Owen McNeill.
Tá na hagaracha le scrí sé mar agarthóir an Clive Sullish léit agam agus cursaí cultúrthas mó atá faoi cabbada le ge agus conspóidí literathe faoi Airclan na Manistrach agus le héad. An príomh chospóir a bhí aige in sna léithantí sin ná scríbhneoireacht na Gaeilge a chur chun tosaigh. Seachas éon rud politiúil. Is dócha go raibh sé géirí áfeocha na Gaeilge chur Griach agus scríbhneoireacht haamplach a chur ar fáil. Aistí a scrí, gearscéalt a scrí ar nós Ísagáin. Agus ar nói d'éirigh leis gearscéal nua aimsirthe Orbert sa Gaeilge. Mar dúirt Martin O'Kane cleach sé an oscailt phléascach. Bhí sé faoi anáil mópasán agus mór gearscéalathe na hórpa. Agus ar bhealach dócha gur ceap sé go bhféadfadh sé na cosbóirí sin a chur chun tosaigh gan ghlacha le políochta.
Is beag baint a bhí ag bírsach le chursaí míleta I ré seachtain na Cásca, mar níor mór an óla sé chursaí míleta. Tá scéalan go raibh sé na heasa I lár ar de bhí go fosta agus go raibh sé sa mealach ar ghaoin eile agus go raibh Tom Clark ba chear chuinnig cin eile peann agus pápa ar a hallgan bheith sin agus ligan go bheith scríomh. Agus ar bhealach siad na forógraí a scríomh sé an teachtain sin an rud is suntasaí chá chuid éibre béidir.
The Republican forces hold the lines, taken up at 12 noon on Easter morning. And nowhere, despite fierce and almost continuous attacks of the British troops, have the lines been broken through. Yeah! The country is rising in answer to Dublin's call. And the final achievement of Ireland's freedom is now, with the gods' help, only a matter of days. The valor, self-sacrifice, and discipline of Irish men and women are about to win for our country a glorious place among the nations.
Ar bhealach bus golóirí scríbhneoirí fillí na daoine sin agus ní honan son sa rá gur fir bhíleata iad. Dinú comórú orthú in neall ar an éirí amach ach ar bhealach níl sé sin ceart mar go príomh tá tábhacht leis an bírsach mar theoricóir liberálach I gcúrsaí iadachas a chur an bhéim a gcónaí ar an báiste féin seachas ar an gcóras ar an ábhar féin agus ní ar thurthaí scrúdathe. Tá métha scrí stair an iadachas san tír seo de bhíoh anna-hábhacht leis an bírsach. Beidir gur aontas sé le Tomás dá bhís a dúirt educate and you may be free. Mar ar bhealach tá macála an ráite sin le clos ón bírsach. Éire ní amháin Gaelach ach séir, ní amháin séir ach Gaelach. Hic sé cócht an iadachas.
He understood very clearly governmental theory and colonial theory, and he could see what the British were doing, trying to denature Irish culture. The Japanese studied the British model before they invaded Korea, and they had 4 professors who spent a lot of time in the British Museum studying how it was done, extirpation of local culture, inculcation of feelings of inferiority, break up the traditional land system, and above all, language. And Pearse recognised that, and he saw education as the method of freeing the country. And that was what his initial impulse was, and teaching the Irish language.
Suppose education is about fostering. Their education was about repression. Education should be about inspiring young minds. Theirs was about taming it. The modern education system as it stands, it's just turning our boys into things.
Pearse opened St Enda's, Ireland's first bilingual school, in Ranelagh in September 1908. Amongst those who taught there were his brother Willie and a young colleague of Pearse's from the Gaelic League, Tomás McDonagh.
Tuisgur scríbnóir an McDonagh, a such go raibh an character céanige a réiteach le character Pearsaigh, sé sin cuasa lína, agus mar sin sort na hánta sin na principal agus na haimena céanna. Dar iad ar hard a bheith cardúla céile, agus le féringe bugna sort ciúin cúchlach go pásanta an Pearsaigh, ach ba é McDonagh an taon duine mar deirfa go raibh sé cardú leis, agus a bhí mar sort gná chara sóisialte ige.
Pearse was frightfully shy. He was also very reserved. But on this occasion, anyhow, we went out to see McDonagh in St Enda's, which was at this time in Rathfarnham. And we were all standing in the library talking. When McDonagh suddenly got me by the arm and said, come outside, John, I want to talk to you about something. So I went out, leaving my sister in the room with Pearse. And will you see Pearse? Will you see Pearse? He won't stay in the room for a minute with her. And the next thing, the door opened, and Pearse shot down the passage with his head down, like as if he was pursued by devils. It was so funny.
In 1910, Pearse transferred St Enda's to a new premises, the Hermitage in Rathfarnham, a beautiful 18th century house steeped in Irish history.
I live in a place that is very full of heroic memories. In the room in which I work at St Enda's College, Robert Emmet is said often to have sat. Through our wood runs a path which is called Emmet's Walk. They say that he and Sarah Kern walked there.
Chúid tunnachar Emmet I bhaim a Pearse go mór, mar níomháin go raibh Macaulay Emmet le feiceáil san áit, ach thosa Saol Emmet agus gníomhre Emmet a taobh seo an Pearsaí de tarrá, agus thosa sé héin a ghul sa tró a chua Emmet de tarrá. Seachas a bheith plé le cuasaí cultúr agus a tuairt cóil le cuasaí políochta. Hic sé go gaith sé forbert mar rodaí, go gaith sé troid a chuir suas, go gaithfí rialtas na Breataine in éireann a leagan agus feicimid tro níos politúla séhar an Pearsaí ón am sin amach.
No failure, judged as the world judges these things, was ever more complete, more pathetic than Emmet's. And yet he has left us a prouder memory than the memory of Brian victorious at Clontarf or of Owen Roe victorious at Benburb. It is the memory of a sacrifice, Christ-like in its perfection. In Emmet, the spirit of Irish patriotism called to a dreamer, and he awoke a man of action. It called to a student and a recluse, and he stood forth a leader of men. It called to one who loved the ways of peace, and he became a revolutionary.
In April 1903, Padraig Pearse travelled to the village of Rosmuck, deep in the Connemara Gaeltacht. He fell in love with the area and its people, and travelled there every summer. By 1910, he had built himself a summer home there, overlooking Loch Arulach.
Tá tú rógarcha an it féin a Pearsaigh. Ní dhéanann tú cadrabh le gael, séanann tú a gá lúdar. Nor a hagas tú in a measc, tagan mar a bheoch níl dubh I duchar agus líon orthú. An té a bhí canta roimh heachtait, bíonn sé in a host, an té a bhí geallgóric, tagan grúam An í an níl hasanna gunnet is cunta le sin, neadar. Is dói lum go bhfuil gá Pearse acán, fear grúma dinanta, agus fear geall sinanta. Ní eachtar an fear geall sinanta, ach go hanamh. Agus is í an cuid is granara den scéal, nach óldum cé a cún fear dorcha, nó an fear geall an Pearse ceart.
Is réir a chéile síle me hosa Pearse chuir spéise gursaí polítíochta. Béidir go bhain se leis a tréimhse, na tréimhse sin ribh go mór, bhí an polítíocht I gairí níos géire agus bhag sé dachar ag daoine gun arda a thuirsair. Ach leag sé héon páirt I bheachtas a 19 thug rí heas na cuairte ar bhlád lia agus agriomh feachtas an aghaidh na cuairte seo. Bhí Pearse páirteach sa bheachtas sin bhí daoine eile ar nós Éamonn Cant agus Sean McDiarmid agus Thomas MacDonagh. Bhí siad siúd páirteach sa bheachtas sin chumá, mar sin thosa sé coráithne ar phoblachtóirí. Thosa sé héine I tuairt óráidí ag cruinne poblachtacha agus de réir chéile tugad isteach I measc poblachtóirí agus baeall go raibh sé suntasach go leor sa drám sin.
Sean. Tom, this is Patrick Pearse. Patrick, Tom Clark.
Patrick.
How do you do, Tom?
How are you?
We'd like to talk to you about the Emmett commemoration that's coming up. Both myself and Tom agree that it's a very important opportunity.
Very special day. We have one issue, though. We need somebody to make a speech that day.
It's really McDermott who introduces Pearse to Clark, brings him along. Clark and McDermott were looking for a speaker. I hesitate to use the word frontman, but really, to a large extent, that is what he is. Pearse is acting according to the script that Clark and McDermott have devised.
Can I ask you something? If Robert Emmett was heading out there tomorrow, would you follow him?
Is there a man here among us who wouldn't?
Nice to meet you, Patrick.
Although Clark and McDiarmid saw the potential in Pearse, there were others in the IRB who felt he was too moderate. As late as 1912, Pearse was sharing Home Rule platforms with members of the Irish Parliamentary Party. But even though Pearse was still in favour of Home Rule, a threat of violence had now entered his speeches.
Ní saoirse an racht seo, ach beidir le dia gur bheith tús na saoirse é. Ach má cliste ar an dendal seo, tá dráman éireann agus táimsear a gcuine chuomh. Ar bhulas do ghaol gan dul I gcomharla nó I gadrabh le gal go deo arís. Ach iad ar agrit festa le lámh láidir agus le fuair claimh. Tuige gal, má fioltar ar an arís. Go meg in a hugacrérig ar fud na héireann.
The desire to move well beyond Home Rule is something that evolves. For some people within the Fenian movement, within the Irish Republican Brotherhood, they're quite explicit about that from the first decade of the 20th century, that Home Rule is in no sense an adequate solution to the problem of Irish nationalism and of defining what the future of Ireland is going to be politically, socially as well. They do not see that as being in any way adequate, and they are quite explicit about that from an early stage. For others who do eventually become involved in the Irish Republican Brotherhood, they are not as explicit or clear-cut are definite about that in the first decade of the 20th century. It evolves, and that's true for people like Patrick Pearse as well, that their political evolution is somewhat more complicated and is somewhat slower.
In Pearse's case, there was also another element that was coming through. His growing disillusionment with the capacity of an entirely cultural project to deliver a culturally fulfilled Ireland, shall we say, an Irish-speaking Ireland. And I think that was partly to do with the failure of the practical project to make his school work. By 1912, Pearse, through his school, was virtually a bankrupt. The strain of keeping the school going was enormous. And I think he increasingly attributed that to the hostility of in a sense, the political environment, the educational political environment in which he was operating. He got no support through any state structures and no grant aiding of any particular form for his school. And in a sense, maybe he came to the kind of conclusion that, like, was it Mao that said, you've got to change in a revolution. You know, you don't change the fish, you've got to change the water in which the fish swims. So perhaps Pearse was being pulled in this direction, having to realising that the school, being his fish, needed to swim in different water. And this then gave him the political impulse that we had to change everything about the way Irish life was constructed, including the political framework within which it worked.
Pearse joined the Irish Volunteers at their foundation in November 1913, and he played a central role in the organisation from the beginning. A month later, he was sworn into the IRB by Bulmer Hobson, and it was Hobson who organised a 3-month lecture tour for Pearse in the United States in order to raise funds for St. Enda's. In early 1914, Pearse left his brother Willie in charge of the school and he travelled to America. In the US, his speeches became increasingly militant.
I think Pearse was hugely influenced by the outbreak of the First World War as well, particularly the idea of the spilling of blood for a greater end, and the emergence just before that of the Ulster Volunteer Force as well. He seems to become quite intoxicated by the notion of Irish people being armed and being dedicated to a particular cause or dedicated to a particular end and being prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice towards that end. That does influence Pearse in a very profound way. Pearse was somebody who had a very intense focus on this notion of sacrifice or this notion of idealism. He tended to deal in superlatives a lot of the time. And that theme of blood sacrifice is significant. It's very important for Patrick Pearse in particular.
The young men of this nation stand organized and disciplined and are rapidly taking up arms. Blood has flowed through Dublin streets, and the cause of the volunteers has been consecrated by a Holocaust. The war in Europe has brought about a crisis which may contain, as yet hidden within it, the moment that generations have been waiting for. It remains to be seen whether, if this moment is revealed to us, we shall have the sight to see or courage to do, or whether it will be written of this generation, alone of all the generations of Ireland, that there were none among it who dared to make the ultimate sacrifice. Remember, England's difficulty is Ireland's opportunity.
The Great War was the opportunity that the IRB had been waiting for, and it was decided to stage a rising before the end of the war. A military council was formed, and Pearse was appointed to it. With plans for a rising underway, the IRB were looking to stage an event that would rally public support to their cause. And when the old Fenian Jeremiah O'Donovan Rossa died, it was decided to mark the occasion with a major display of nationalist strength.
Iarab Bersach an óráid a thuirt cos na hóí, Tom Clark is ar dhéana agus dúirt sé é dhéana chutsasaí agus a béidir. Agus thug sé chaint an sin agus óna cunta sé dá daoine bhí láthair, chuir sé bhaim go mór orb agus Is dói gur chuide sé le intin na nína olafó le haid troda, agus bhí an óráid sin an táhachtach le daine a ghrísa agus a thiúirt le chéile agus an tochrid ar fad ba rud móra ar meánach go dtí an éirí meach choíire.
Pacified Ireland. They think they have purchased us. They think they have purchased half of us. They think they have pacified Ireland. They think that they have purchased half of us.
They think they have pacified Ireland. They think that they have purchased half of us and intimidated the other half. That they have purchased half of us and intimidated the other half. They think that they have purchased half of us and intimidated the other half. They think they have purchased half of us and intimidated the other half. They think they have foreseen everything, that they have provided against everything. But the fools, they have left us our Fenian dead. And while Ireland holds these graves, Ireland unfree shall never be at peace. They think they have pacified Ireland. They think they have purchased half of us and intimidated the other half. They think they have foreseen everything, that they have provided against everything. But the fools, they have left us our Fenian dead. And while Ireland holds these graves, Ireland unfree shall never be at peace. One man can free a people. As one man redeemed the world. I will take no pike. I will go into battle with bare hands. I will stand up before the goal as Christ hung naked before men on a tree. And I say to my people's masters, beware. Beware of the thing that is to come. Beware of the risen people who shall take what ye would not give. We're seizing this building in the name of the Irish Republic! Everybody
On Easter Monday 1916, rebel forces occupied various points throughout Dublin City. Pearse was at the head of the Republican forces that marched from Liberty Hall to the GPO. At about 1:45, in his role as President of the Provisional Government of the Irish Republic, Pearse stood in front of the GPO and he read aloud the proclamation of the Irish Republic.
Irishmen and Irish women, in the name of God and of the dead generations from which she receives her old tradition of nationhood, Ireland, through us, summons her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom. Shame on you.
In retrospect, it probably seems more dramatic than it actually was. I think if you look at the proclamation, it reads very well. And it's a document, I think, which is very generous in spirit. And I think it stood the test of time. But of course, in the middle of effectively what was the start of a war, you have crowds milling around, you have people confused, what on earth is going on here? So I don't think Pearse had the kind of audience at which he was his best. So the impact, I think the impact was something of an anticlimax.
In this supreme hour, the Irish nation must, by its valour, discipline, and by the readiness of its children to sacrifice themselves for the common good, prove itself worthy of the august destiny to which it is called. Don't fight in France, will you? Signed on behalf of the Irish Provisional Government.
Thanks be to God, Pearse. We've lived to see this day.
Pearse, I can die a happy man. I've lived to see the greatest day in Irish history.
On the wall.
We've got to be very careful when we talk about public opinion or public mind. It's actually quite difficult to discern how exactly the public reacted in 1916. If you consider that after the second day of the Rising, journalists, for example, were not allowed to go into the firing line, what we do have instead are testimonies from people who were there at the time that do give or do reflect this notion of hostility. Robert Holland, for example, who was in Marrowbone Lane, talked about the reaction when they were being led from Marrowbone Lane to Richmond Barracks, that there was this act of public hostility, that the British soldiers actually had to protect the Irish rebels from the barracking public. Shoot those Sinn Féin bastards, is what some of them were saying. They didn't know who these individuals were or what they were trying to do, but they did know that it caused not only huge inconvenience, it also caused serious civilian casualties. And if you look at the breakdown of those who were killed during the Easter Rising, you can see that 62 rebels were killed, 132 British soldiers were killed, but 256 civilians were killed. So it's quite clear who bore the brunt of the suffering and of the death in Easter week 1916. It was the civilians. So it's hardly any surprise that there would have been that degree of hostility at that time.
A number of the dead were lying around, civilians, soldiers and volunteers. One of the civilian casualties was squatting against a wall with a white bundle. His head was split open like a pomegranate. A volunteer was lying at the corner of Moore Lane, a dead Tommy beside him. I'll never forget that little volunteer. They played a machine gun on him. Pieces of wool, his undergarments protruded through his uniform, making a scarecrow character of a man.
Is Dakar boy on phobal a vas, agus ní féidir é dhéanamh inis, có fada son in a dhé. Agus léir ón na tuairiscí a tugu nuachtáin bhlá clia mar hampla, go raibh roinnt wacht na daoine, ionach mí hásta leis an éirí amach, a gearán agus a chlausan faoi, agus fiú inán na réabhlóidethe féin a waslú ag deireadh na seachtaine. Ag an amcéanna má scrúdaíonn tú tráchta sí a scrí irisí ón Astráil agus ón na Stáit Aontaithe féin. Is léir gur hacaigh go leor daoine, cosfuintear na carrach a go háirithe, leis an éirí amach, gur thugad ar bula bos fiú don na cimithe agus iad a gimacht. So is léir ón na tuairiscirí gur raibh an tír féin scailte I ngá leath.
All citizens of Dublin who believe in the right of their country to be free will give their allegiance and their loyal help to the Irish Republic. We have lived to see an Irish Republic proclaimed. May we live to establish it firmly, and may our liberty which freedom will bring!
He obviously was an inspirational figure, and just having them there would have given them great confidence. But you can see a veiled criticism in, say, in Michael Collins's letter where he writes, he talked about them afterwards as being some of the finest people God ever put on earth, and it was a privilege to know them. But he wondered whether the middle of a revolution, shot and shell, was that the best time to be issuing poetic flowing communiques about how we're marching on this one and that one, and our gallant allies are coming to our aid. I mean, this was all a theatre of the mind, keeping the troops' morale up. They were cut off, and every day brought thousands more troops to the noose was tightening all the time on them. And they were being shelled, and the flyers were gaining on them.
No, we can't leave now. We can't leave now. One more hour. And then we'll organise other parties to leave. What's the plan?
Well, your best bet is to go to the forecourts. If we get as far as Pearse Street, then we'll be fine.
Right, we start evacuations in an hour. We're staying for one more hour. One final stand. I desire now, lest I may not have the opportunity later, to pay homage to the gallantry of the soldiers of Irish freedom who have, during the past 4 days, been writing with fire and steel the most glorious chapter in the later history of Ireland. Justice can never be done to your heroism, to your discipline, to your unconquerable spirit. In the midst of peril and death, for 4 days, you have fought and toiled, almost without cessation, almost without sleep, and in the intervals of fighting, you have sung songs of freedom of Ireland. No man has complained. No man has asked why. Each individual has spent himself, happy to pour out his strength for Ireland and for freedom. If we do not win this fight, we will at least have deserved to win it, but win it we will. Although we may win in death, already we have won a great thing. We have redeemed Dublin from many shames. I am satisfied that we have saved Ireland's honor!
On Friday, the rebels were forced to abandon the GPO. The leaders managed to make their way as far as a small shop on Moore Street, where the military council met for the last time.
Minute of Provisional Government Decision, 29th April, 1916, HQ Moore Street. Believing that the glorious stand which has been made by the soldiers of Irish freedom during the last 5 days in Dublin has been sufficient to gain recognition of Ireland's national claim at an international peace conference, and desirous of preventing further slaughter of the civil population and to save the lives of as many as possible of our followers, the members of the provisional government here present have agreed by a majority to open negotiations with the British commander. P.H. Pearse, Commandant General, Commanding-in-Chief, Army of the Irish Republic.
At 2:30 on Saturday afternoon, Patrick Pearse walked up Moore Street and surrendered to General Lowe at the corner of Parnell Street. On the 2nd of May, Pearse was tried by court-martial in Richmond Barracks and sentenced to death.
I think Pearse got the result he craved. This is what Pearse would have seen as happening long term, that these people would be seen as individuals who made the ultimate sacrifice, but in doing so created a momentum that couldn't be stopped. And if you do see the 1916 Rising, and it's legitimate to see it as, the foundation act of that era of great political upheaval in Ireland that ultimately leads to the creation of a new state, and in time leads to the creation of an Irish Republic, well then Pearse's view was very legitimate and very accurate in that sense.
This is the death I should have asked for if God had given me the choice of all deaths. To die a soldier's death for Ireland and for freedom. We have done right. People will say hard things of us now, but later on, they will praise us.
Nuair a dhearad túrim a phobal I leathan éirí amach. Bhí cúpla rud a gceist, nó an chuí ar cuireadh daoine chun báis, chuir sé sin uafás ar dhaoine. Go háras nuair a chola siad faoi daoine chuireadh chun báis, a bhí tín nó bhí gortaí go donna agus mar sin de. A chanús ar sin, sílim gur a measag daoine ar an éirí amach, gur an a daoine seo sásta, íireachta dhéanna, agus bhí measag daoine ar sin, agus thug sé le tuiscint go dhaoine go bhéad fhí seasa in impreacht na Breataine. Agus níos fuid an ón, nuair a bhí níos mó daoine sásta sin na dhéanna, bhí imimecht daoine ag séiteag mar sprága acu.
The Rising had no democratic justification in that sense. But revolutionary conspiracies are like that. They can't wait for a ballot box. They can't openly put their views to the public and get approval. What can be said is that, in a sense, their goal, if not all of their actions, received democratic validation after the event. So in that sense, you could say that, this is dangerous, in that sense, they had gazed into what the Irish people really wanted. In that sense, they had understood what the Irish people longed for, which was to be free and independent, and they had made their stand for it. The danger was that subsequent movements would also say, we know better than the Irish people what they really want. Whether the men of 1916 would have agreed with subsequent movements that have engaged in that kind of behaviour, I think is very much open to doubt.
The who have brought his shell of merluck stood deal
Are there any revolutions that deliver on their promises? That's the big question. Is the Irish situation unique in not delivering on the republic that some of these people envisaged, or some of the values of the republic that these people envisaged? What was delivered and what did happen was the achievement of political sovereignty. And that was a hugely important part of the legacy of 1916 and the legacy of that revolutionary period generally. When you look at some of the other promises, when you look at some of the other aspects of the proclamation in terms of equality, in terms of a greater degree of social cohesion, you could say that that hasn't been delivered on. So I think in terms of contemporary Ireland, and again this is going to be discussed, I suspect, quite vigorously around the 100th anniversary of the Easter Rising and the commemoration of that, have we become the Republic of Pearse and Connolly? And there's going to be further debate about that. There's going to be those who will insist that we need to go back to the proclamation, that we still need to strive towards the ideals that are contained in the proclamation.
Oh, Roche the Vahawalia.